Hi, I'm Jennifer Leigh from the University of Kent, and today with Julia Sarju from the University of York, we're going to be talking to you about the future of chemistry, learning and teaching, and why it must be accessible. So the Archbishop Desmond Tutu said a very famous quote about there comes a point where we need to stop just pulling people out of the river. We need to go upstream and find out why they're falling in. This is what we would like to apply to accessibility within the lab. We need to stop just addressing it when there are problems and actually fix this and build in as many solutions as we can before those problems happen.
So to start off, we really need to understand what all the problems are and learn from lived experience. So the first thing we want to tell you about is the Royal Society of Chemistry funded Amplifying Student Voices project. And you can find out more about this on the website and on social media in Chem Education. So two of the student quotes that I want to share with you today are here. I feel like assumptions are sometimes made about what a normal looking person who is perceived as healthy. Support is available, but often the impact is wider than one-to-one lab support. And then the next one is on paid summer projects. Paid summer projects can really help students gaining experience whilst earning rather than, say, working in a factory, and internships giving opportunities to try new things. So that leads on to talking about inclusive internships. How can we make these work experiences, paid work experiences, inclusive, and learning from lived experiences? So next, I'm going to tell you about a project we've been doing at York for the last couple of years, working in partnership with students to co-create resources to make chemistry learning and teaching more accessible, and also to learn from the lived experiences of our students in order to audit and get a greater understanding about the accessibility of the learning and teaching that we offer. So this has been running over the last couple of years with Amy Curtin, Abby Stock-Durdurth, Beth Slim, and Kate Bennett. And there's been a number of really useful outputs. Amy has led the authoring of a book chapter looking at student partnerships for making change. And they've also shared some key messages that I can share with you today. Their key messages are: accessibility benefits everyone. We need to be actively inclusive. We should be listening to diverse voices. Student partnerships allow students to feel their voices are being heard and making change, and that remote internships allow for diverse students to have an accessible space to be heard and to make a difference. I also wanted to share that Kay Bennett has made available an inclusive lecturing guide and is very receptive to feedback in revising it as well. So that might be something that interests you.
So another project that the Royal Society of Chemistry, Diversity and Inclusion Fund funded was around the Future Accessible Lab. This was with myself, Anna Slater at the University of Liverpool, Aurelia Igambaram and Kira Hilton, who are both PhD students at the University of Kent. And we wanted to look and find out what the issues were, particularly within research labs, which are also teaching labs, but also to see if we could imagine what an accessible, inclusive lab would look like. And we have combined forces. So our project team, combined with Julia's project team, have co-authored a paper which will be coming out in Journal of Chemical Education very soon. And you can see up here the author list, which also includes postdocs and undergraduate students, as well as academics and postgraduate research students.
So why is it important to be looking into accessibility in teaching labs? Well, there's a lot of evidence showing that STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and maths teaching labs can be inequitable. So there have been reports highlighting inaccessibility, chilly environments and discrimination, also gendered task distribution leading to inequitable learning outcomes, and a reduced sense of belonging for minoritized students and staff. Here's some photos of our chemistry labs at the University of York, and there's lots of good things here to highlight. There's clear and clean, uncluttered lab spaces. There are regular stations with lots of equipment that specific experiments will need, so that students don't have to travel very far and be searching around the lab. And this is made possible by a fantastic technical team, and their work makes the labs much more inclusive. However, it's still not perfect. If you look on the right, you can see there's absolutely loads of lab coats. We have a very large teaching space where we can have lots of students present. And this can mean that it can be quite a busy space and a noisy space. On top of that, to have really good air circulation so that we don't have smelly chemicals and the harmful and health and safety risks, but that can cause a lot of background noise, as can the rest of the instruments. And this, issues to do with background noise, smells, hazards, and how that might impact on learning has recently been highlighted by Dr. Flaherty in the Journal of Chemical Education paper. And I'd recommend taking a look at that, looking at how sensory overload may be affecting our students and staff in our teaching laboratories.
The culture of academia, and particularly within STEM, can be really difficult to navigate if you're disabled, chronically ill and neurodivergent. In this report, which was commissioned for the Royal Society, a female early career researcher said, "I simply cannot work the long hours that I did before I was unwell. This makes it extremely challenging to be as productive as I used to be. I'm certain that this will affect my ability to publish and keep up with my contemporaries, and so I suspect that this will affect how I'm compared to others when applying for permanent academic role and grants." This problem with hyperproductivity and a culture of overwork is endemic throughout academia, but is particularly prevalent within some disciplines within chemistry. I shouldn't mention organic chemistry, but I'm going to mention organic chemistry and others. And this is reflected down to our undergraduate students because they see this culture played out with their demonstrators, with their postdocs, and with their lecturers. For the RSC project that we did with WISC, we held focus groups with students and researchers at different career stages from the UK, US, Australia and New Zealand. And we were hearing a lot about these inaccessible cultures, as well as practical recommendations to make labs more inclusive, which we are sharing in the paper that we referred to earlier. Some of these quotes were, "I would really struggle to stay studying in a lab now," from a senior clinical scientist. "I stayed at the same university because of support, but will there be consequences for that? Yes." And that was from a prospective PhD student. And another PhD student shared, "Ivory tower ableism is not accepting of illnesses, and there is a culture of not taking holidays or sick leave." We know that it's really important for students to feel inclusive, to feel that they can declare or disclose a disability, chronic illness, or neurodivergence, to know that there's space for them within academia and within the culture. However, if you can look at this graph, it will show you that there is a very unequal participation in academia, whereas up to maybe even more than 30% of the population are disabled, chronically ill and neurodivergent. It's only an estimate because those proportions have been increasing a lot over the last few years with the pandemic. The proportion of STEM students is much lower than that, at less than 15%. And within academics, it's even lower at less than 4%. And if we think about how those academics might then look to progress their careers and provide role models for those students, seeing that they have a place within science, it's far, far less, with applicants being less than 1% for UKRI big fellowships. The Women in Supermolecular Chemistry Network take an intersectional approach to looking at marginalisation. In this book, which is available open access, we talk about marginalisation due to gender, due to race, ethnicity and disability, as well as how these intersect with each other to provide more barriers to someone if they have compounded identities or they have different aspects to their identity. So one of the things that we do and we found was really important for staff was to feel a sense of belonging and to find a network and a community of people that they could feel supported by, that they could share their lived experiences with, and then they could find solutions to the challenges that they faced. One of those communities is the National Association for Disabled Staff Networks. I would recommend, if you don't have a disability staff network in your university, to set one up. And these people, NEDSOM, would help you support that. Or if you do have one, to find out what they're saying, because whether you're disabled or not, the information and the things that they will share will help you make your labs and your teaching more inclusive to your students.
Building on that, the STEM Action Group that Jen and myself co-chair has been working on some co-created recommendations to challenge ableism and exclusion of disabled staff and students in STEM subjects. And if you want to contribute to this or to find out more, you can follow the QR code to see our problem statement and give feedback. So what's next? Well, we're really glad that the Royal Society of Chemistry have extended the funding for our Amplifying Student Voices project.
And we are also looking to finish off our Accessible Labs project with having a VR representation of what an accessible lab and what an inaccessible lab might look like in order to raise awareness of barriers and also potential solutions. So watch this space for that one.
So that just leaves us to thank you for listening, and we look forward to questions.